gracious good day to one and all once again. 'Tis I, Norton the First, by grace of God, Emperor of the United States and Protector of Mexico, back with you all once again for the weekly edition of Emperor Norton's fantastic history vlog and podcast. Today is November 11, 2020. We'll be covering the 11th through the 17th today. This is episode number 163, and it is our 244th day under COVID-19 restrictions. So programming note, once again, what used to be a daily vlog is now a weekly vlog every Wednesday, and then on the weekends, Sundays, we come back with our special guest superstar, the Countess Lola Montez of Lansfeld, and always a special guest singer. So make sure to tune in. Make sure you know our new schedule. If you have any questions, leave them as comments down below or email emperornortontour@gmail.com. Well, let's begin with our national days. Starting with the 11th, it is, of course, Veterans Day. Hats off to Sergeant Manuel Lefkowitz, U.S. Army, and Captain Alvin Amster, U.S. Marine Corps. It is National Sunday Day. Bring back the Emperor Norton Sunday. We're going to do a whole episode on that at some point, but this button right here by our Grand Duke Aaron Almanza was our victor. He's the imperial maker of things and stuff, or stuff and things, I think it is. Anyway, he made these because we did get Ghirardelli to make the Emperor Norton Sunday last year. We've been trying for a number of years to get them to bring it back, and they won't. For those of you who don't know, an Emperor Norton Sundae is a goblet glass lined with sliced bananas and cherries, 2 big scoops of vanilla ice cream, hot fudge, whipped cream, and a sprinkling of nuts on top. Contact the Ghirardelli Company. Tell them to bring back the Emperor Norton Sundae. Where were we? The 12th, National French Dip Day. You know, the French dip sandwich was invented in Los Angeles at either Philippe the Original or Cole's. We prefer Philippe, but there's some controversy about this. World Kindness Day. What do we say at the very end of this vlog and podcast? Every time, be kind to one another. The 14th, that was the 13th, by the way. The 14th is World Diabetes Day. Well, we are a diabetic ourselves, so we appreciate that. National Pickle Day. Well, we're a pickle maker as well. Emperor Norton's fantastic sourdough pickles. Maybe someday we'll market them. The 15th, Clean Out Your Refrigerator Day. Yeah, clean out your refrigerator. The 16th, International Day of Tolerance. That's a good idea, I think. And the 17th is Take a Hike Day. I think it's actually to take a hike, not anyway, you understand what I'm talking about. Well, let's move on to our Florida Man segment. We got 2 today because they were just so good. Actually, we have 3. Oh dear. Well, let's begin with the 11th. Florida man breaks into restaurants, strips naked, eats noodles, plays bongos. Moving on to the 14th. Man dresses as woman, buys puppy with stolen credit card. Okay. And finally, on the 17th, Florida man removes woman's kidney during back surgery because he thought it was a tumor. Oops. Well, let's move on to our San Francisco stories for today. We have 2 as well. Actually, we had 3 before, but we have 2 today. And as we so often do, we rely on John Ralston's wonderful book, This Date in San Francisco. And we'll begin with November 11, 1924. The California Palace of Legion of Honor is dedicated. Ralston writes, the Legion of Honor was a gift to San Francisco from Adolph B. Spreckles and his widow, Alma. Adolph, born in 1857, was the second son of sugar magnate Klaus Spreckles. Alma, originally Alma Emma Charlotte Corday de Normand de Bretteville, in 1881, despite her exalted name, was born impoverished. Her putative Danish aristocratic father considered work beneath him. So Alma's French-descended mother ran a bakery and took in laundry, among other things. Alma began working as a teenager to help support her family. Artistic, she enrolled at the Mark Hopkins Institute of Art on Nob Hill. paying the tuition from money earned from life drawing modeling, for which 6 feet tall with a voluptuous figure, she was well suited. Alma also posed for the figure of the Republic atop the Dewey Monument on Union Square. That's somewhat controversial to say that, by the way, which brought her to the attention of Adolf Spreckels. Alma became Adolf's mistress, and after 5 years, his first and only wife, despite 24 years difference in their ages. Alma bore 3 children, and Adolf built her a classic French mansion on the north side of Washington Street, west of Gough, with a spectacular bay view, now owned by Daniel Steele. Alma was an outsider to San Francisco elite. She resolved to show them by, among other things, creating a showcase of French culture. The French Pavilion in the Panama Pacific International Exposition of 1915, itself a copy of the Legion of Honor in Paris, was the inspiration for a museum to house artworks from France and other countries donated by the Spreckels. Designed by architect George Applegarth, who had designed the Spreckels Mansion on Washington Street, the museum sits on cliffs at the west end of Lincoln Park above the Golden Gate, one of the most breathtaking settings of any museum in the world. We can definitely attest to that. On Election Day, November 4th, voters approved 2 city charter amendments accepting the Legion of Honor and DeYoung Museum in Golden Gate Park for San Francisco. Dedication of the Legion was on Armistice Day, November 11th, in honor of French and American World War I dead. On a cool, sparkling morning, dignitaries seated themselves in the courtyard as over 1,000 spectators watched. Park Commissioner William Humphrey, Mayor Eugene Schmitz spoke. A chorus sang the Marcel. Sorry me. I always butcher French. Anyway, it's the French national anthem. Anyway, I don't think that's right either. And then M. Alfred Tierman, counselor of the state of France, representing the French Republic, addressed the crowd in French. The Legion's interior soft lighting and oak flooring create a relaxed, contemplative atmosphere in which to appreciate one of the finest collection of Rodin sculptures in the world, and those were Alma's, along with the works of Renoir, other Impressionists, and rotating exhibits. Concerts are regularly given. In fact, we know the organist, Jonathan Dimmock. He's incredible. In 1958, the Legion was the setting for a scene in with James Stewart and Kim Novak in Alfred Hitchcock's Vertigo. Well, let's move on to November 12th, 1936. The San Francisco Oakland Bay Bridge opens. It's better mention us. The San Francisco Oakland Bay Bridge, designed by Chief Engineer Charles Purcell, is actually 3 bridges. The first is a double-deck suspension span with 2 towers, an anchorage at Rincon Hill, and another anchorage at a colossal pier in the bay. The second is a similar span from the pier to the anchorage at Yerba Buena Island. The world's largest vehicular tunnel was bored through the island to connect with the last section, a homely double-deck cantilever truss to the East Bay. The upper deck was 6 lanes of automobile traffic, 3 in each direction. The lower deck was for trucks, other commercial vehicles, and 2 tracks of the East Bay's Key System commuter railroad. By the way, the east span has been replaced. It was damaged in the '89 earthquake. The one that's there now is much more beautiful than the cantilever one, which was rather ugly. The Bay Bridge was built at a cost of $78 million, more than any other bridge in the world, with 23 men killed during construction. It opened on November 12, 1936. Official ceremonies began at 10 a.m. with 250 naval aircraft over the bay. At 10:35, Governor Frank Merriam cut a link at the bridge's east end. The official party then drove to San Francisco end to cut another barrier as a 19-gun salute was fired. Aircraft stunted and rowing club shells and yachts raced, after which the governor's party withdrew to luncheon at the Hotel Oakland. At 12:30 p.m., President Roosevelt pressed a button in the White House, sending a signal to activate the green go signal at each end of the bridge. Highway patrol motorcycles swung ahead of the line of automobiles that had been waiting since the night before to be the first to cross. Then, said the Chronicle, quote, "The Bay Bridge opened its arms to a motorcade whose descendants will be pulsing their way across the bridge 1,000 years from now on the same steel." Approximately 70,000 vehicles crossed the first day. For the first and only time, pedestrians were allowed, restricted to walkways on the right lanes of the upper deck. The San Francisco Oakland Bay Bridge was overshadowed by its much more famous neighbor, The Golden Gate Bridge, when it opened in May 1937. The Bay Bridge is functional. The Golden Gate Bridge is a work of art in a unique natural setting. With broad walkways on either side, it offers an experience that the Bay Bridge cannot. And, of course, those of you who follow us know that the Bay Bridge was our idea in 1872, and it should be named for us, and hopefully someday it shall be. This great injustice will be rectified. Well, enough about that. I don't want to go on too long because it's a long vlog today and podcast. Well, let's move on with our other history for today, starting with the 11th. 1634, following pressure from Anglican Bishop John Atherton, the Irish House of Commons passes an act for the punishment for the vice of buggery. Look it up. 1790, chrysanthemums are introduced to England from China. They're beautiful. I love them. 1918, World War I armistice signed by the Allies in Germany comes into effect, and World War I hostilities end at 11 a.m., the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. 1921, U.S. President Warren G. Harding dedicates the tomb of the unknown soldier at Arlington Cemetery. Harding passed away in the Palace Hotel here in San Francisco. 1926, Route 66 is established. Get your kicks. 1957, demolition begins on the cable car barn at California and Hyde in San Francisco. 1959, the first episode of Rocky and His Friends airs. Hey, Rock, watch me pull a rabbit out of my hat. Again? I'm sorry, my Bullwinkle's much better than my Rocky, and my Bullwinkle's not that good. 1959, Seals Stadium in San Francisco is demolished. There's now a Safeway on that site. 1987, Van Gogh's painting Irises sells for a record $53.6 million at auction. That record's going to be broken in a little while. You'll see. Moving on to the 12th, 1873, the Bay District Racetrack in San Francisco opens. First Avenue, Fulton Street, Fifth Avenue, and Point Lobos Road, now the Richmond District. 1923, in Germany, Adolf Hitler is arrested for attempt to seize power during the Beer Hall Putsch coup. If only Schicklgruber had stayed in art school, the world would have been much different. 1926, the first recorded aerial bombing of U.S. soil took place in Williamson County, Illinois, during a feud between rival liquor gangs, the Sheltons and the Burgers. 1927, Leon Trotsky is expelled from the Soviet Communist Party, paving the way for Joseph Stalin to consolidate complete power. 1938, Hermann Goering announces that he wants Madagascar as a Jewish homeland. Well, that would have been different. 1954, Ellis Island Immigration Station in New York Harbor is closed. It's now a national park, beautifully preserved. 2015, Out Magazine names Barack Obama Ally of the Year. Obama becomes the first sitting U.S. president to pose for a cover of a gay magazine, hopefully not the last. Moving on to the 13th, Benjamin Franklin, the only president of the United States who was never president of the United States, writes, "Nothing can be said to be certain except death and taxes." 1865, P.T. Barnum's New American Museum opens in Bridgeport, Connecticut. 1895, first shipment of canned pineapple from Hawaii. Didn't know that one. 1952, false fingernails are first sold. Please press on. 1982, the Vietnam Veterans Memorial opens in Washington, D.C., featuring the names of over 58,000 U.S. soldiers killed or missing in the Vietnam War. Moving on to the 14th, 1851, Moby Dick by Herman Melville, first published by Harper and Brothers in the U.S. 1883, Treasure Island by Robert Louis Stevenson is first published. We'll come back to him later on. 1896, a power plant begins operation at Niagara Falls. Niagara Falls? Slowly I turned, step by step, inch by inch. I imagine some of you have no idea what I was doing there, but some of you do, hopefully. 1994, the first trains for the public run of the Channel Tunnel under the English Channel, the Channel connecting England to France. 1792, Captain George Vancouver is the first Englishman to enter San Francisco Bay. Moving on to the 15th, 1660, the first kosher butcher, Astor Levy, is licensed in what was then New Amsterdam, now New York City. 1777, the Articles of Confederation, the first Constitution of the United States, is approved by the Continental Congress. 1837, Isaac Pitman introduces his shorthand system of writing. Is that still being used? I don't know. 1904, King C. Gillette, yes, King C. Gillette, patents the Gillette razor blade. Didn't know that. 1920, the League of Nations holds its first meeting in Geneva. 1939, FDR lays the cornerstone of the Jefferson Memorial in Washington, D.C. It's so beautiful. 1939, Nazis begin the mass murder of Warsaw Jews. 1941, the Cow Palace opens in San Francisco. 1959, Richard Dick Hickok and Perry Smith murder 4 members of the Clutter family at their farm outside Holcomb, Kansas. This will become the subject of Truman Capote's book, In Cold Blood. 1969, an estimated 2 million people take part in the Vietnam War moratorium demonstrations across the United States. Also 1969, Wendy's Hamburgers, American fast food chain founded by Dave Thomas, opens in Columbus, Ohio. Not Dave Thomas from SCTV, nor certain relatives of mine, but that Dave Thomas. 1990, producers confirmed that Milli Vanilli did not sing on their album. Oh, was that a scandal? Whew. 2017, Leonardo da Vinci's painting Salvator Mundi sells for $450.3 million at auction in New York, a record price for any artwork. 2018, David Hockney's Portrait of an Artist, pool with 2 figures, sells for $90.3 million in New York, record for a living artist. Moving on to the 16th, 1801, first edition of the New York Evening Post is published. 1907, Oklahoma becomes the United States' 46th state. 1938, LSD, lysergic acid dithylamide, is first synthesized by Swiss chemist Dr. Alfred Hoffmann at the Sandoz Laboratory in Switzerland. See the trails? 1939, Al Capone is freed from Alcatraz. 1969, the My Lai massacre of between 347 and 504 unarmed South Vietnamese civilians by U.S. soldiers is first reported. 2018, the CIA concludes Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman ordered the killing of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. Moving on to the 17th. 1558, Elizabeth I, age 25, ascends to the English throne upon the death of her half-sister, Queen Bloody Mary. Ooh, I could go for a Bloody Mary right now. Why not? It's a morning drink. 1800, Congress holds its first session in Washington, D.C. in an incomplete Capitol building. 1853, street signs authorized at San Francisco intersections. 1913, the first ship sails through the Panama Canal, which connects the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. 1936, Edgar Bergen and Charlie McCarthy become an overnight success on radio. 1970, Douglas Engelbart receives the patent for the first computer mouse. By the way, on that subject, if you've never read the book Insanely Great about the creation of the Macintosh, I bet he's mentioned in there. I don't have a copy of the book to check that, but there's a whole story about Apple employees going down to a Xerox facility and basically stealing all the ideas. Don't sue me, Apple! 1973, U.S. President Richard Nixon tells AP, Associated Press, people have to know that whether or not their president is a crook. Well, I am not a crook. Let's move on to our births today, shall we? Starting with the 11th, Dostoevsky, the Russian novelist, writer of Crime and Punishment. 1885, General George S. Patton from World War II. 1922, Kurt Vonnegut Jr., one of my favorite authors. Moving on to the 12th, 1815, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, American women's rights activist. 1814, Rodin, the French sculptor. That came up earlier, didn't it? 1866, Sun Yat-sen, the first elected president of China. 1934, mass murderer Charles Manson. Hiya, Chuck. How you doing? Moving on to the 13th, 1850, Robert Louis Stevenson, Scottish author of Treasure Island. 1929, Fred Phelps, American Baptist minister. He's the real hateful, homophobic one who holds up just vile signs at people's funerals, and he's just a horrible human being, and luckily he's dead. Sorry. Moving on to the 14th, 1765, Robert Fulton, American inventor and engineer, first commercial steamboat. Now, 1840, my favorite impressionist, Claude Monet. 1863, Leo Baekeland, Belgian-American chemist and inventor of Bakelite plastics, a very early form of plastic, highly collectible today. 1896, First Lady Mamie Eisenhower. 1909, Joseph McCarthy. At long last, sir, have you no shame. 1947, American journalist and satirist P.J. O'Rourke. 1948, Prince of Wales, Prince Charles. 1954, Condoleezza Rice, the first African-American U.S. Secretary of State. If I remember the story correctly, she was set to speak at the Pacific Union Club on Nob Hill. Well, they don't let women in. They had to make a special rule just to let her in. I don't know if that's changed or not. If you know, let me know. Moving on to the 15th, 1887, the wonderful artist Georgia O'Keeffe. 1906, Clifford LeMay. He was responsible for the B-52 bomber. He was the head of the Air Force for a time. He was also vice presidential candidate in 1968, I believe it was, not 1972, to George Wallace and the American Independent Party ticket. 1920, another great artist, Wayne Thiebaud. Moving on to the 16th, 1889, George S. Kaufman, the wonderful, wonderful playwright. Wrote a couple of the Marx Brothers movies, as well as The Man Who Came to Dinner, You Can't Take It With You. Oh, just one of the greats, one of the truly greats. 1904, Isamu Noguchi, Japanese-American sculptor. 1948, Howard Dean, American politician, governor of Vermont, also ran for president and had to give it up because he screamed. Can you imagine that today? I can't. Well, let's move on to our deaths for today, starting with the 11th, 1831, Nat Turner, slave rebel who led a violent insurrection in Virginia. Also, Typhoid Mary, the first person in the United States known to be immune to typhoid, dies at 69, and unfortunately we lost the year on that. Sorry about that. Trying a new formatting today for the script. 1976, wow, a lot of artists today. Alexander Calder, American sculptor. He was known for his mobiles. 1993, well, speaking of Nixon and Watergate, H.R. Haldeman, who stayed silent until his death, and he knew what was on the 18-minute gap, which we talked about in another one of our vlogs and podcasts. 1994, Pedro Zamora, AIDS activist. He was also on Real World San Francisco and became quite prominent, but he died at the age of 22 in 1994 from the complications of AIDS. 2004, Yasser Arafat, chairman of the Palestine Liberation Organization. Moving on now to the 12th. 1916, Percival Lowell, American astronomer, predicted discovery of Pluto and founder of the discovery of Pluto and the founder of the Lowell Observatory. Oh, sorry about that. 2018, Stanley Martin Lieber, American comic book artist. Moving on to the 14th, Booker T. Washington, educator and organizer. The 15th, 1630, Johannes Kepler, German astronomer, discovered the laws of planetary motion. 1978, Margaret Mead, American anthropologist. 1984, baby Faye, who received a baboon's heart, dies at 3 weeks old. Moving on to the 16th. 1950, Dr. Bob Smith, American physician and co-founder of Alcoholics Anonymous. 2006, Milton Friedman, American economist. Moving on to the 17th. Did we just say this one earlier? Well, I think it was his birth, actually. 1917, Rodin. Once again, I think his birth was recent. I think he's one of those people that died on his birthday. I'll have to go back and check that one. Not right now, though. So let us now conclude with our quote from Robert Louis Stevenson today, and we'll see it's one of our favorites. He wrote in the Wrecker in 1892, "Of all our visitors, I believe I preferred Emperor Norton, the very mention of whose name reminds me I am doing scanty justice to the folks of San Francisco. In what other city would a harmless madman who fostered himself an emperor of the two Americas have been so fostered and encouraged? Where else would even the people of the streets have respected the poor soul's illusion? Where else would bankers and merchants have received his visits, cashed his checks, and submitted to his small assessments? Where else would he have been suffered to attend and address the exhibition days of schools and colleges? Where else in God's green earth have taken his pick of restaurants, ransacked the bill of fare, and departed scatheless?" Yes, it's all true. And that is a very good description, with some of the derogatory comments taken out, of our reign in San Francisco in the 1800s. So that just about wraps it up for today. And don't forget, if you'd like to leave a tip, we are accepting tips. Here's the information for that. You can do a monthly subscription via Patreon, as well as one-time donations via PayPal or Venmo. We greatly appreciate our wonderful donors. Couldn't do it without you. Also, if you'd like more information about our tours, here's the website for that. We are now touring every Saturday at 11 from Union Square. It's about a 2.25 hour tour now. We can't go into interior spaces, so shorten the tour a little bit. Also have to keep it shorter by city regulation. We had a group of 11 this last Saturday, and it went extremely well. So sign up for that. We're back, baby. We're back. And we hope to have other tours rolling out over the next year into 2021. Stay tuned for details on that. And if you do take the tour, know these two things. Masks are absolutely required. We are carrying masks in case anyone forgets them. If you can't wear a mask, you can't take the tour. It's that simple. And we also have hand sanitizer and latex gloves if anybody requires those. And also, social distancing is absolutely enforced. We don't want to make anyone sick. So until we see you again, stay safe, stay healthy. If you go outside, wear a mask. Be kind to one another. There's World Kindness Day coming up. Don't take unproven cures that might kill you unless it's recommended by a doctor, and I doubt a doctor is going to recommend something's going to kill you. So be careful about that. Until we see you again. I think I said be kind to one another. If I didn't, I'll do it again. Until we see you again, a gracious good day.